Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Garrison. I want to welcome you to this session of Humanity Rising as we begin a 5-day program on conscious leadership, focusing primarily on the leadership that is being provided by women and the sacred feminine. As we begin, I just want to note a couple of things about where we are in the development of Humanity Rising. Uh, we have been conducting programs first 7 days a week for the first year, and now 5 days a week for the last 4 years as we approach our 5th anniversary in May. And this week will mark the end of that end of that pattern. And beginning next week, we'll be convening only one day a week on Fridays with me. We may have a session with Shannon and some others. Those details are being worked out. But we've really reached a transitional moment for Humanity Rising that I'll be commenting on over the next couple of days. But it has to do essentially that Tom Eddington and Tom has been essentially the co-convener of Humanity Rising. We have been caught up in preparations for the first conference, which will be in Washington this December, 14 through 17 at the Omni Shoreham Hotel, where we'll be recreating the format that we developed many years ago, 30 years ago, with Mikhail Gorbachev, one of the results of which was to convene an annual conference called the State of the World Forum between 1995 and 2000, which at that time marked a conference that brought together more diversity at more levels and probably a more transformational way than anything that had been done up to that time. And through a very dear friend, Lynn Twist, many of you know, who came to me last October and said, Jim, it's time to do the State of the World Forum again, because the period between 2025 and 2030 will be just as potentiated as between 1995, which was basically the end of the Cold War, and the turn of the millennium. So that is what I have been working on with Tom, and it's attracting an extraordinary momentum, which I'll be describing shortly. In the next days, we have a website that will be going up in the next couple of days. Speakers are being invited, co-chairs are being confirmed. It's a very exciting moment in I think the development of Ubiquity University and Humanity Rising, because as we move forward, Humanity Rising will become a information channel for the State of the World Forum. So even though we'll be narrowing to one day a week, that will not be permanent. As we see how, my schedule develops and Tom's schedule develops and other potential partners come in, we will shapeshift the Humanity Rising as we can, because we know we're providing a service for tens of thousands of people out there who've registered from over 130 countries to watch our broadcasts. We don't want to truncate it. We want to shape shift it. And I'm announcing this so that we can all be both patient and anticipatory as we move forward. The one final note I would make before turning it over to Tom is that when we started Humanity Rising, we were in the depths of the pandemic, as you'll all recall, in 2020. We were all under lockdown. We were all wearing masks. They were telling us we all needed to be vaccinated. And something was very wrong with that picture in my mind. And so reflexively, we created in a time of isolation a free event every day that allowed people from all over the world, because virtually everybody was under lockdown, to come together in community to talk about things that matter in their lives. For the first 10 days, we heard only from the voices of women out of awareness that it is in times of maximum duress that the voices and leadership of women is the most urgently necessary. So there's some mythopoetic synchronicity that as we bring that phase of Humanity Rising to a close and shape-shift it into the new era, that we're concluding with a 5-day program featuring women. It's a very important dynamic to underscore and appreciate in a time such as ours, where chaos reigns and the center does not hold. So thank you, everyone, for joining us here on Humanity Rising. And now I turn the program over to my very good friend and colleague, Tom Eddington. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you as always for your opening comments. And very excited to be on this journey with you to create the State of the World Forum later this year and over the next 6 years. It's a much needed and necessary time in humanity's evolution. And speaking of humanity's evolution, we're at a very critical time. The world is facing a unknown future in a way that we've never faced before. Certainly, we've had crises, we've had periods where there was a lot of uncertainty, but what's going on in the world right now, both as a result of choices and decisions being made by the administration here in the US, but also it's a culmination of decades and decades of human activity that has brought us to a place where we have some of the greatest opportunities that are available or have ever been available to our species, and also some of the biggest crises that we've ever faced as a species. And I'm really looking forward to this week and this conversation, particularly because throughout much of the last several centuries or millennia, the voice of women has not had the presence, the authority, the recognition that's needed and required. And so I'm absolutely delighted to be presenting this week with my good friend and colleague, Sean Mitchell, to bring some voices and some perspective into where are we and where do we need to go, and what's the contribution, what's the role that women have played throughout the centuries, and we need to help in the evolution of our species. So I'm going to start by inviting a colleague and dear friend, Karen Buckley, to come on screen and start by helping us get grounded and getting centered for this conversation and for the week. So, welcome, Karen. Great to be with you today.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you. And hello to everyone. It's good to be with you all again. Let's take a minute and find some breath. It's always the place to start, isn't it? If you would join me in perhaps noticing where you are standing or sitting or lying. Notice what part of your body you're the most aware of. Is it your shoulders? Perhaps there's a little tension. Your scalp. Are your eyes straining to see? You bring yourself back into perhaps the back side of your body a little bit more. Begin to notice the back of your head between your shoulder blades. Your spine as it runs up and down. Maybe relaxing your arms. And if you feel so inclined, either lowering or closing your eyes. And then beginning to notice, wow, I have legs. Imagining as if your breath was running all the way down through your legs, through your hips, your knees. Again, being aware of the front and the back of your legs. And down into your feet. Discovering you have toes. Feeling the core, the center of the bottom of the foot. And as you breathe, let's breathe together. Breathing in, feel that air come all the way into your throat, your lungs, your belly, down into your legs, into the earth. And as you draw the breath in, you fill every cell in your body. Allowing it to extend perhaps into your skin and maybe just a little bit past, so that you fill out in you. And I would invite you for a moment of reflection on when you first became aware that there was a divine side to the feminine. Did you come to know a Shekinah or a Mother Mary early on in your life? Or was it last year or 10 years ago that you got to know Kali, Tahira, Kuan Yin? The list is long of the feminine faces of God, the feminine faces of the divine. And just bring to mind, bring into your body, your heart, that first moment that first experience that you had with the divine feminine. And taking a breath and come on back, and we'll join the collective here, this community that is gathered.
Thank you, Karen. A beautiful way to start today's broadcast and to start our week. And thank you for that.
Mm.
I'd like to invite my colleague and co-producer of this week, Sean Mitchell, to come on screen. Welcome, Sean.
Thanks, Tom. Happy to be here. Super excited. It's been an awesome journey the last couple of months to work with you and to participate in finding these extraordinary women that are going to be our panelists all this week. I'm very excited.
Well, thank you for making it happen, and I'm looking forward to our conversation. So I think what I'd like to do is invite Kristen to come on screen, and Karen, if you want to come back on screen. And Kristen, if you'd like to, thank you for joining us from Rome today, and like to have you just share any opening thoughts and remarks that you'd like to help orient us to this conversation.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, thank you, and it's wonderful to be here again. I was here back in 2020 on also with Voices of Women with Karen, and it's amazing to be back sharing about the feminine again. And I'm very grateful to Sean and to you and all of you convening these meetings and this possibility to share. So I was thinking, my God, what a world are we living in? Or rather, oh my goddess, what a world we're living in. Because with so many changes and so fast, just looking at the news today of stock exchanges crumbling, and there's so many things going on. And I was thinking this incredible possibility we also have if we can stay together. So there are certain qualities I feel of the feminine, the qualities of being held. Karen mentioned Mother Mary. She mentioned a number of other feminine deities. And what came to my mind is this thing that we are held and nurtured by them. And I think this is the quality we need to see both in the invisible realm of the divine and in the visible realm of us divine humans. And this need also to feel safe when everything is very uncertain has become so important. So just also the grounding of having our feet on the ground in this time, I think is another part of the feminine, together with the beautiful men that are with us, and also that the feminine, the yin, is in all of us. So a second thought, besides that of living in a world that's changing very fast and our need to have something to trust in and have faith in, I was also thinking about how collaboration has become more important, and the collaboration of being connected, not only to each other, but to our own true intuition, what's beyond. And I know myself that if I really feel well connected to myself, my own intuition, what's beyond, but also to my sisters and brothers around the world, I feel so much more safe inside. And with that safety, I can take a risk. And then we can create the new things together. And also this aspect of this time where we see so many needs for new solutions, and the new solutions can come through our creativity, and that often starts also with our receptivity. So the yin, the feminine in our receiving, and that is also something very important in this time, I think. So these feminine qualities in women and in men of receptivity, in intuition, in collaboration, of community, in peace and harmony, are qualities that we need to give value to, strong values. And I think having traveled all over the world and worked with women, I have seen so often that the qualities of the feminine was what was least valued around the world. So many women felt the urge to act like men because this way they felt more heard, seen, and values. But right now we need that the feminine qualities needs to be highly valued, and we need to listen to each other and see it in women and men. So these are just some opening thoughts, and So maybe this is enough for now, and I'll share more as we move along.
Yeah, thank you, Kristen. Kieran, would you like to share some of your opening thoughts?
Certainly. Well, I often start with the dictionary. So when Sean sent the invitation for the divine feminine and leadership, I looked up divine because I'm so curious. Holy, sacred, or heavenly. Okay, that made sense. But as I look down further, the divine is also lovely, like as if she looks rather divine, or delicious, as we just had the most divine dinner. All of which started me recognizing this glorious, excellent, good-looking, bewitching. These were some of the words in the thesaurus that are there for the divine. And when you put that together with feminine, and you look up the definition of feminine, it's womanly, soft, delicate, graceful, modest. And you're looking for a leader who can take an organization to the next level, or you're looking as a venture capitalist to put money into an organization where there are women who have identified the product and who are leading, who are you going to give the money to? Someone who looks divine and is soft, delicate, graceful, and modest? Or are you going to give it to a man who you think of in terms of a divine that is perhaps on a chair, in the sky? And so I'm going into the archetype here, but it's embedded in our bodies. It's embedded in the way we live and the way we understand ourselves. And as Kristen has with her extraordinary conversations that she has brought together in the Women International Network conferences, I was privileged to speak and attend for a number of years in Rome and Paris and other places. And if you're not aware of all of her extraordinary work and all the women that she's brought together and men in this conversation, do go and look it up. I have a whole bookshelf. I was just looking at it actually before we got on, of books that from The Crone by Barbara Walker back in the mid 80s, an extraordinary book on women and power, to The Feminine Face of God, Sherry Ruth Anderson and Patricia Hopkins, The Unfolding of the Sacred Woman. Gosh, I'm skipping around a bit, but that there's something about the feminine face of God when I pick that back up. It's about, Jean Shinoda Bolen in the introduction said, this is a book that invites women and men to define for themselves what is sacred, to find an indwelling source of spiritual sustenance in themselves, in communion with others, with the divine as they know her, it, him. The face of God is an aspect of divinity, an approach to the sacred that is not exclusively of women. So we can use the feminine face of God to recognize as women what is our wisdom. And how are we recognizing our own wisdom? And how are we not? And what are the constructs in the world that, again, recognize our wisdom? And what are they not? I've always been curious for decades, what makes the difference? Two people in two teams can have the same knowledge base, they can have the same talents and skills, yet one makes good decisions and the other consistently makes decisions that have negative effects on themselves and others. And I have facilitated hundreds, if not thousands, of meetings over the last over 3 decades, maybe more, with government, corporate, nonprofit, spiritual communities. And what makes the difference in how an organization runs and how it feels to be part of that team in the service that they provide to their customers, to the world, whether they're extractive or regenerative? what is that wisdom inside that guides them? And why don't we have more of it? It's such a critical time in history. And I appreciate that, Jim, that you and Tom are bringing together the State of the World Forum again. I remember attending the State of the World Forum at the Fairmont Hotel in San Francisco. And the compilation of wisdom, the bringing together of the different points of view on behalf of the world, on behalf of the leadership that we're all called to provide. And that's what's of most interest to me, is how we are living the wisdom inside each of us. How are we bringing into our daily action? My definition of leadership is someone who is willing and able to take action on that which matters most to them. Willing and able to take action on that which matters most to them. So every single one of us is a leader. Whether we have positional power or not, we certainly have personal power. And the leadership that we're called into at this time does include the characteristics that Kristen brought up, being of holding, of receptivity, collaboration, peace, and knowing, all of those characteristics of the divine feminine. I'd like to also suggest that the divine feminine has always embodied qualities that initiate change, that challenge the status quo, that drive transformation. Qualities that we see now in many women business leaders. There's a fierceness to our intuition and our deep wisdom, that ability to see beyond the surface, to make decisions that are based in a perception, a very clear perception, rather than just data or ego. There's visionary leaders like Oprah Winfrey, Indra Nooyi, who CEO of PepsiCo for many years, have relied on their intuitive sense and their sense of family and connection and community. The divine feminine is about unyielding courage and moral integrity, standing up for what's right even when it's unpopular. I think of hearing Malala Yousafzai, the way she challenged deeply held assumptions and ignited change. The divine feminine is about radical empathy, not just empathy, and authentic connection, and relentlessness, that grit and perseverance that leads women to redefine leadership and keep things going. So I look forward to this conversation today, to exploring more completely and learning from each other. What does it mean at this time in the world? What does it mean to be a woman who chooses to be a leader? What does it mean for women and men to choose to bring the divine feminine alive, ever more alive, within their bodies and their minds and souls and hearts, and bring that forward? I'm so curious. I don't really know. Yeah.
Thank you, Karen. Sean, do you want to share any additional perspectives as we get into a dialogue?
Sure. Gosh, I'm processing a lot of what both of you said, Kristen and Karen, and a couple of different few things come to mind, because I feel that right now, in an awakening world, we can't do things the way they've been done. And Jim has mentioned this so many times. You can't invent something new by doing it the way we've done it in the past. And although I feel very strongly about not just that we need more women in positions of power and politics and business, and businesses and politics are the lever of what's going to come about. We need to be thinking in terms of shape-shifting systems and ideas that haven't been, in terms of creativity, we need to recreate some of the systems. And so that also gets to me, comes back to the values of the divine feminine and leadership are important, collaborative, relational, intuitive. But what also comes up for me is, as I just said, the shape shifting of leadership is, and Karen touched on this, the archetypes of Kali and Shakti, the warrior, the destroyer, and birther.
Mhm.
And so, and so I really, you know, kind of tune in as well to a combination there of how women can, and I don't want to overuse the word shapeshift, but can go back and forth between the mother, nurture, carer, collaborative, intuitive, relational, and the fierce mama bear, and and the whole notion of new birth and creativity. And so, a last thought along those lines is I feel that women, in terms of an awakening world, and men too, of course, but there's a new frequency, there's a new fields of energy that, and then Kristen kind of mentioned on this too, in collaboration and community.
Mhm.
And the notion of building, creating a new narrative, and bringing all those things together, I feel are some of the superpowers, if you will, of accessing source and the energies of the sacred, divine, feminine, if you will, with, the hard work that we need to do here in our material and physical world.
Thank you, Sean. I want to pick up on some of the threads that I heard from each of you and see if I can tie them together into a question and a pathway forward to our conversation. So, Karen, something that you shared, there was some research done by Google a number of years ago now, where they tried to understand what was it about their high-performing teams that was fundamentally diffent than the other teams in their organization. And that it's a Project Aristotle. The report's readily available. And what they found was for their high-performing teams, there were some specific things happening within the team environment that enabled certain teams to excel at a rate well beyond other teams. And you think about Google as an organization that recruits some of the most talented people in the world, you wouldn't expect to find significant differentiation, but in fact they did. And one of the drivers, the primary drivers of success and outperformance of the highest performing teams was psychological safety.
Mhm.
The members of the team felt psychologically safe, meaning that they felt that they were seen as who they were as an individual. They were heard. Their point of view was open to being heard by their teammates, and they were appreciated for their contributions and who they were as individuals. And that collectively created the psychological safety that allowed them to perform as a team well beyond the other team members. And yet we know in our collective societies, it varies from country to country, the feminine voice, the voice of women, oftentimes isn't seen, isn't heard, isn't appreciated. It's not valued. The ability for women to be more connected, and I'm making generalizations, but for women to be more attuned to their intuition than men defaulting more to their skull brain. And so I'm wondering, with that both conscious and unconscious bias and the systems that that are barriers to creating that psychological safety, that are barriers to creating the contribution of women. How do we break through at a time when humanity needs to be hearing in a way we haven't allowed or permitted or enabled that to happen before? What is, from the three of you, what do you see is going to be needed and necessary? And I just think about my own childhood growing up. My mother was incredibly intuitive. My father, by and large, lived from his skull brain. And my mother would defer to my father over and over and over again. And yet, with the passage of time, I could look back as a kid and see, Mom was right. Mom was right. Why didn't Dad listen? And so I'm curious to hear from the three of you your thoughts on what and how do we change? I mean, we've got incredible women leaders from around the world who are
Yep.
showing us a way through, but I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, maybe I go.
Mhm.
I was thinking about this, what you just said now, and I have reflected a lot of this value of context, not
Mm,
just the content, because also very often we look at how people are permeated within organization and in society is often based on the productivity of the individual, while somebody is productive because of the context, as you just said from Google.
Mhm.
The context is that the mother, let's say, the nurturing thing that is there in the invisible that makes us feel safe and creative, there to speak up, and hence can be more productive. So there is something about this education almost of valuing the not just who is producing the fastest individually, but how we can value that invisible, that the values of beauty also, the value of care. And let's say, if I feel on a society level that, okay, I feel safe, I value culture, music, opera, all of those things, because these are in some ways element in our societies make us feel safe, or in an organization that I value that we have an area where we can come together and drink coffee together, that we can come together and speak. Right now, a lot of people are only doing surveys and things on their telephone instead of talking with each other. So we need to make sure, one of the solutions is to make sure we can come together in groups of 3 or groups to share with each other and openly talk about this like now. And we know that the intelligences of our mind needs to be mixed with the intelligences of our emotions, of the spiritual and the physical. And I think the solution for women and men is to become aware and almost deprogram our patriarchal way of thinking. Because I have seen that also in women, and there was a study by UNDP in November, December 2023 that came out and said that 9 out of 10 humans have negative biases towards women. So amongst those 9 people, there were women and men, because women and men have grown up in the same societies. So until we start becoming aware of this, that, oh, maybe I value less my heart than my mind, or maybe I value more the individual productivity than the context. Maybe I don't want to spend money on art or on childcare, but just on, the profit growing things. Then until I wake to that, the change is very slow. So what is happening in society now, thank God, is thank goddess, is that many of us more and more people are waking up. And it also looks like almost the opposite is happening, but I do think we are collectively evolving. And that process of awakening really involves that of valuing those qualities of the collective, of going on a journey, not just shooting for the goal, so to speak, and our language also. And it's very important that we all become conscious in our inner and our outer journeys, and the inner journeys of us as a witness to ourselves and what's happening outside. Because as leaders leading our own life or that of others, we are somehow often going first also. And going first is going into the new territory, the unknown territory. And that needs that trust, and it needs that safe context that we can feel lean on, that we feel this sort of trust. And if there is no human holding us, then at least we must rely on the divine. So I think there's a lot of work, inner work on becoming aware of our own biases. And then it is the practical work of sharing, just like we do right now. And then there is also practical work of policies and things we can do. Like I had in my own office a story on somebody who wanted their salary on their husband's bank account. And I realized that he didn't give her all the money that she wanted. So I made a policy that everybody who works for us must have their own bank account. Yeah. They cannot have a joint account. It's not allowed in our organization. Just small little things. Okay, that's nothing to do with bias, perhaps, but it's a practical thing to make sure that the women are truly in charge of their own economic empowerment, let's say. So yeah, there were many different topics here, but yeah, I think I stopped.
Wow, I love that you created a structure within your organization that supports that behavior change and that change in consciousness, that change in the way of thinking.
Yeah.
Because as I find in organizations and with all the executive women and men that I work with, we don't change our thinking, our mindsets. They're so embedded. Those patterns and grooves of our thinking are in the patterns and grooves of our lives. And they're evidenced everywhere once we step back and begin to see them.
Yeah.
And Tom, you asked the question, how do we break through? How do we change?
Yeah.
And all of the work that I do with executives and their teams, and with many of them over 10, 20 years, I work with organizations and their teams and the executive coaching that I do. I refer again and again and again to what my colleague Peter Block wrote, this wonderful book, The Answer to How is Yes. The way we begin to create change is to discover what matters most to us and take action on it. And to do so from that place of an internal yes. And we all know times in our lives where that yes has moved us into action that we might not have thought about otherwise. It can take us beyond some of those biases, although the biases are embedded in society, not that they should stop us, but that we should be aware of them. I would like to turn to the dictionary one more time, if I may, and some of you have heard me say this before, but it continues to inform my thinking and change the thinking of so many people that I work with. Because back in the early 2000s, I was on the board of Spirit and Business International, and we were hosting a series of conferences in the US and in Switzerland. And they came back with 85% women. I'm sorry, 85% men in terms of the speaker docket that they were proposing. And I couldn't understand it, given that these were all extremely devoted spiritual practitioners, highly successful in business. They had integrated spirit and business. How could it be that, as they said, that there weren't enough qualified women as presenters? And it caused a fissure in my brain, so that I began researching and looking and trying to understand, what is it that we don't see? What is it we don't see in ourselves as women that creates doubt, or that crazy imposter syndrome, or any of those things that take us apart instead of cohering us and bringing us together so we bring ourselves forward? And I looked up and I thought, what we don't recognize is wisdom. And I looked it up in the dictionary. A wise man is a man who is wise, a discreet or prudent man, well versed in the affairs of the world. And that definition, or something very similar to it, was in a lot of different dictionaries. And I looked in a lot of different dictionaries because I was looking for a definition of wise woman, and there weren't many. I finally found one in my Oxford Historical English Dictionary that Rick had brought me back from England in the mid-'80s. And it said, a woman skilled in magic or hidden arts, a witch, sorceress, especially a harmless or beneficent one, who deals in charms against disease, etc. That's from the Oxford English Dictionary, 1986. Now, if that's the way we conceptualize of wisdom, and you're an executive, who are you going to call? A discreet and prudent man, well-versed in the affairs of the world, or a woman skilled in magic and the hidden arts? Well, if you do call a woman skilled in magic and the hidden arts, it's probably not to your board, to join your board, or to come in and advise you in public. Yeah, and so those prejudices that live inside of us prevent us from actually owning the wisdom that is ours to bring forward, the steps that are ours to take. And I began trying to look for, okay, what is my own definition of wise leadership? And I'll be happy to put this in the chat, but it's wise leadership springs from the inner knowing of the heart, linked, that's that internal yes, linked with work and life experience, matured as an embodied intelligence. So it's not just in the brain, it's an embodied intelligence in sync with nature's ways. And Randy Hayes, who started Rainforest Action Network many years ago when I was speaking about wisdom and my definition, I didn't have that last part. And he said, you must add in sync with nature's ways. And he's so right, because if we're not in harmony, if we're not working with the earth where we live, our birth and death are intrinsically linked to the earth, then we're in trouble, which we are. And just the last piece on wisdom that I think would be useful is that even though in ancient times, Sophia is wisdom in Greek, represents the feminine personification of wisdom, as you go through Plato, Socrates, Kant, all of this begins a real focus on the cognitive, the skull intelligence, as Tom called it, as wisdom. Helena Marchant from the University of Lisbon began to open that definition when she talked about it as mastery of the basic pragmatics of life, and increased awareness of the limits of the reliability of our own knowledge, awareness of the dilemmas. Paul Baltz and his colleagues at the Max Planck Institute in Berlin defined wisdom as expert knowledge system concerning the fundamental pragmatics of life. Well, it strikes me, as Rumi said, yesterday I was so clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today I am wise, so I am changing myself. So there's got to be something deeper in that understanding of wisdom that begins to open us. Robert Sternberg, I'm going to go over this very quickly, but Robert Sternberg from Cornell University spoke about a balance theory of wisdom, and that ability to balance interest, personal, interpersonal, societal, and to serve the common good. So he spoke about sagacity as integral to wisdom. And people are wise to the extent that they use their intelligence to seek a common good. And then finally, the third professor that really helped me flesh out my understanding of wisdom, and which I think is exactly what comes forward with the divine feminine when we bring it into our leadership, is the kind of wisdom that Monica Ardelt at the University of Florida spoke about when she spoke about wisdom as cognitive, reflective, that ability to see things from a different perspective, that ability to look and understand assumptions that we might have made or mindsets that are driving behaviors or the way we've structured an organization, and affective or compassionate, that empathy, that compassion, that care for others, as three dimensions of the wholeness that is a wisdom that can live inside of us. And of course, remembering that Michelle Obama in Becoming says, she reminds us that real leadership is relational, not transactional. So all three of these are within the context of relations, as Kristen spoke about earlier, and the community, the connection with Earth, the connection with each other, letting ourselves rest in the arms, in the connection with each other. Yeah. I'll stop there.
Yeah, Karen, just I couldn't help but get triggered when you referenced the definition of a wise woman and the use of the word witch. And over the weekend, Prime Minister Netanyahu talked about a witch hunt with his most recent scandal. President Trump, for years now, has been talking about the witch hunts that are going on, and it's just that perpetuation of that definition of how, without even realizing it, how devalued women are in our culture and society. And this is coming from, two very powerful men in our society. Richard Page has a question in the chat. I just wanted to bring into this conversation. He writes, please, Kieran, more on why my sweetie with immense talents and 2 PhDs, including Harvard, feels inadequate. Does she just see herself more accurately than do I? And we've seen lots of studies where men tend to overvalue their capabilities and women tend to undervalue. And I'm wondering if the three of you want to speak to that question from Richard.
Say the question one more time. I'm sorry. Excuse me, Sean. I just need to hear it again.
Yeah, we've seen multiple studies where men tend to overvalue their capabilities and women tend to undervalue their contributions and capabilities. And I'm wondering if you want to speak to that.
Oh, okay. I just missed the beginning part, but okay, yeah. Go ahead, Sean, please.
Well, in speaking to that in particularly, and back to what you asked originally, Tom, what can we do? I can't stress enough education for young people, because that's basically where, I hate to put it this way, they become indoctrinated. It's how they get mindsets and belief systems. So back to this particular question, that, boys in the classroom are viewed differently, have been in the past, for sure, viewed differently and supported differently than the girls in the classroom.
Yeah.
And it starts there. And of course, with parenting, because every single one of us, we cannot, chokes me up, we cannot not value ourselves because we're aligned with the God stuff. How can we not? But our collective is teaching us not to value, not to see our worth. So I really feel it's a collective thing. But one other little thing to weave in, we're so fortunate right here, this group, to be here, to have the time, maybe a little bit of cash, that we're not somewhere working. Most of the people in the world are in survivor mode. They don't have time to think about these things.
Yeah.
Their world is completely day to day. And I'm just not talking about in the United States. When we consider the population of the world, it's a heartbreak. So I was kind of weaving in the collective women's values, part of the unseen, that how can we not value ourselves when we realize that we're aligned with Source, and how blessed we are to be able to have these conversations. And then finally, education, parenting our children. I think that's where we need to be working. I'm good. Kristen.
Yeah. So I was thinking about the two things. One, also now in the school system, we see even boys now are lagging behind. So now when the girls are doing better, but we didn't mean that the boys were going to lag behind. So we have to find a way also to make everybody thrive. Now, back to Tom's question also here. It's true. We see again and again how many more women feel insecure and undervalue themselves, and men overvalue themselves, right? Now, of course, sometimes women are also undervaluing themselves, particularly in the workplace, because we enter systems and structures created very often by men for men, and we enter there, and there is sometimes it's like having a suit that doesn't really fit us, so we feel weird and we don't know how to place it. We don't know, why am I feeling so strange here? And you can't really find words for it all the time, because we have been educated, brought up to believe that's the way we're going to do it. Set your goal, go and reach it, build your career, and the words are reach the goal, build your career. And in the feminine, it's about receptivity. It's about relationships. And we need to, in my view, completely rethink everything. And not only rethink, we need to sense, feel, receive the new. Because the new will not be, just like we said in Einstein, we need a different consciousness for the new world. And that new world needs to somehow be received and co-created. And our power is to be sourced from Earth. So the feminine is also about cycles, about rhythms, and about seasons. So if we in the Northern Hemisphere, if I take winter seriously and I rest, I come from Norway, okay, there is snow, but underneath the snow, when I'm resting, something is going on. Suddenly spring comes, and guess what? I'm filled with new ideas of new things. If I can manage, if we could manage somehow, and I know this is a big one, and for some people, utopia, because as Sean says, many are just in survival mode. But if we could somehow work more in line with nature, where we rest more when that is needed, because nature does so also. And then we wake up, we get the new ideas, we clean the lawn, spring cleaning, and then we start. I think something there will make us not only feel better and have better well-being for ourselves, but also we will start loving nature more. And if we love nature, we will take care of it, because we do take care of things we love, including a big loving of ourselves, not always feeling we are in the wrong place or in the wrong suit. So I think this is something also. And it's also about taking a stand. We learn often to fight for something. And yes, sometimes we need to fight. We all have also the masculine of, we need to fight sometimes, take structure. But other times it's this thing of taking a stand, like root ourselves in the power that comes from Earth, that we are standing on. And from there saying no or yes. I mean, we are heartbroken very often with the current leaders who are choosing warfare instead of negotiations. And we are all there watching it. It's so hard. How do we do it? And it's almost considered weak to cry. It's weak to even talk about peace. I mean, it cannot be like that. So we need to turn everything around and back to cycles, rhythms, seasons, and well-being, connection, relationships, and that will be the feminine. And that feminine is raw, is wild, is attractive. And we have had many examples on the planet. There are many still, and it's not weak. It's very, very strong. And I think that authentic feminine, that authentic is very, very attractive for men too. And then they will come in their attraction, in their authenticity. And then we can create many, many beautiful things. So I think it's time also to be very, very big in our dreams and have altruistic dreams. Dreams that some people will say, oh, you are thinking about utopia. And you said, yes, perhaps utopia is a place and I would like to be there. Yeah.
In preparation for the week, I was listening to a podcast this weekend with Trevor Noah on what's wrong with men, and it was a wonderful podcast. And one of the observations that was made in the podcast was that we've been seeing here in the U.S., but I think around the world as well, a higher percentage of women getting into higher education as Cup Ferguson just mentioned in the chat. Women, girls performing better in academic settings than boys, and one of the points that was made in the podcast was that not only do boys not have mentors, and young adults don't have mentors, but because of the pedophilia incidents within the Catholic Church and otherwise, men don't feel safe actually coming forward to be mentors for young men. So a lot of boys are coming up into society without the mentoring that they need to address some of these conversations that we're having about how to be a man in society. And instead, what they're seeing is what's happening in video games, what's happening with, someone like any number of the cabinet members of the Trump administration who had no humility to say, I'm not qualified to become a leader, but instead have this um, toxic masculinity in their congressional testimonies. And likewise with many women, they're lacking the mentoring that they need to how to figure out how to navigate in society, in corporate America. And I'm wondering if the three of you want to speak to the role of mentoring and the role models that both women and men are seeing being displayed in our mass media and in society.
I could say something about the role of mentoring, which is that, yeah, I think, Tom, you just gave a real comprehensive picture of exactly what's going on, building on what Sean and Kristen had said and the challenges that men are running into now without the roles that were defined for them in the 50s as the husband and the breadwinner. Now that women are at work, they're lacking that definition and that motivation. So I think that mentoring becomes even more important, and it needs to be mentoring for the world we're in now, rather than mentoring that is returning, which I think there is mentoring going on in some of the men's groups, the tech men's groups online, and there's certainly mentoring of a sort that's going on in some of the Christian young men organizations. And they are mentoring within a certain framework that I don't necessarily find to be a framework that is for the continuation of Earth and the continuation of a healthy life for all humans and non-humans, and so there's this peculiarity of mentoring needed from a wise perspective. Excuse me, I have something in my throat. The other piece I want to speak about is that often women are brought in a change situation when things are getting really bad. And I put a few minutes ago in the chat a recommendation for a book that I've just picked up at the library. It has so many pink Post-its on it. It's going to take me forever to take them all out and be able to return the book. But I'm going to have to go buy the book. But I'm just finding it has such value. It's When Women Lead by Julia Borston. And it is research-based. And so it has research after research after research, example after example after example of women in leadership and the way they have found their way. She does name the constraints. She names the illusions and assumptions that keep women down, both internally and within systems. She also names all the different things that women have discovered and others have discovered that bring them forward. And to me, that's the core of mentoring, is to look within each woman and man at who they are and what they most want to bring forward. It's that yes I was talking about earlier. And one of the things Julia points to is that one of women's strengths is their adaptability, what she calls their adaptability advantage. And she has example after example of women being brought in to what can be called a glass cliff situation, which is that women are brought in when a system or an organization is going through a very difficult change cycle, when things are going into hell in a handbasket, as they say. And the women are brought in at that point and put in a leadership position. And I always looked at that with a certain anger or frustration, because I thought the women were sort of being sacrificed, if you will, in the difficult situation. But what she brings forward in here is how many of those situations were turned around because of women's ability to see that wider context, to perceive other forces that are at work that could be built upon, to look for what is working in the center and build on what's working, amplify that. And excuse me, to adapt to the situation as it is, rather than staying rigid in the past, the way things have been done in the past, and that rather than it being a precarious leadership position without support and resources, these women have actually turned the ship and turned it around and found what the Trim Tab was, brought things up and brought things together. And really brought something different out of that. So I think if we're looking at mentoring ourselves, each other, the young, the youth, or receiving mentoring from the youth, I've received much wisdom from the youth. Thank you all. Let's look for what what there is to acknowledge and appreciate that we're already doing well, and let's build from that.
Yeah, thanks, Karen. I want to touch a little bit. Doreen put in the chat about how we, as a Western society, have not integrated into our the collective of how we bring up our children, the mentoring that the indigenous peoples have done, and I'm not an expert, with their young people. And generally, we learn more about that in terms of the men and the warriors and the young people. In any event, I thought that was really kind of an important note for us in terms, circling back to education and our young people, our young people, our young people. Thanks. Kristen.
Now I was thinking, because often when we talk about indigenous people, everybody is indigenous somehow, from somewhere. I mean, even if we have moved from countries to countries, somehow we can trace back to somewhere. And that somewhere where everybody comes from, different places, is often the fact that they're near nature. And the learning and the connection to nature, whether it's about Ubuntu, that's so widely spread in many African countries, of I am because you are, which goes beyond I am because you are in the sense of humans, but also trees, nature, stars, planets. And this way of thinking in an interconnected way, and that my action has consequences on everything almost. And our consciousness, therefore, becomes very important, because how I do what I do is part of the change in the change in a concentric circle type change. So if we see also that the masculine is the linear, I want to reach my goal, or I want to build this house or the building, and I work in a linear way on the doing axis, then I have the vertical axis of my beingness, which is connected to earth, connected to heavens. And in that, if I work on myself, my inner journey, I overcome my obstacles, I connect to source and to earth. That change then is the magical change of the concentric circle type change, where my resonance field attracts or receives from whatever I'm in contact with. And I think that people who are more in contact with nature are often also operating in the vertical, not just the horizontal. And I think in the time we are living now, the vertical change is also extremely important, because sometimes we can watch the news and see children being killed in wars and things, and we just like, oh, what do I do? Feel apathy. And we can do our little things in our family or in our work or wherever we are in our communities. And on top of that, I do believe that our work in the invisible, hence in the divine feminine, has a little impact also. So it does help to meditate. It does help to pray. And so all those days when you feel, oh, I cannot do enough, look what's going on. At least if you do that little extra prayer, extra meditation, and knowing that our frequency or the field of resonance somehow impacts somewhere. And
I 100%
yeah,
align with what you're saying, Kristen. It really is so important, even if we're not out doing, if you will. And Eckhart Tolle will talk about presence and
Yeah.
being. And you're right, that like a tuning fork, that energy field cannot help but be, I want to say the word attractive, attracting, but it attracts the like, attracts like. And even in the grocery line, if you want to say a prayer, the person next to you is like, what's happening here?
Yeah.
You know, right? They don't even know. And Eckhart will again say, even if you're not out in the world doing, if you can in your own inner life work on your being, I don't like to use the word work, but grow, you are affecting the collective. You are. And so thank you, Kristen, for bringing that up. I think, and I want to just sort of see what else you feel about this, both of you, but how do you feel that this integration of spirit and leadership is imperative at this time?
The image for me is one of Kuan Yin. She's riding on the back of the dragon through the rough waves. Her countenance and her being has the resonance, the vibratory field of connectedness and love. She holds in her hand a vial of blessings. And yet she's writing, you know, so there's this integration. It's up to each of us to recognize the validity and reality of the invisible realms as well as the visible. And to know that this is what brings our leadership forward to make the difference that we're here to make. So it's a really important question, and one to live into rather than sit back and contemplate. I think that because it's our nature already to be working in the invisible and visible realms as we lead in whatever our venue might be.
And I'd like to add that back to what I said initially, I find these times are very uncertain and things are changing very, very quickly. And if we are leading others and ourselves, it's this thing of leading, going first, and having something to trust in besides yourself and your friends or family, the divine. I find it helps. And because every time we get stuck in the fear, then because it's so many things we can be scared of right now, and so many things we can panic about. If you have your savings on the stock exchange and it just collapses this morning, or if we have health issues, and another a pandemic comes, or whatever it is. There's so many things. So we need, I think, almost more than ever, to trust that there is also the divine force around us, and to lead into the divine love frequency as a, yeah, as something to trust on. And we need each other physically also. So coming together, collaborating, relationships. And one of the things I have made a conscious choice to do lately is to talk to people, even in the supermarket. Maybe talk to the people, oh, how are you today? And or ask, instead of only looking at Google for directions, ask somebody. Because I notice in a very little exchange with another human, normally they lit up, and I lit up too. So this thing of just saying, hey, do you know where so-and-so street is, or some small thing, is not because I don't know how to do that on my Google map, but I want a human relationship, even if it's only 30 seconds, to lit up or lit up another. And I think that's a very important thing to do.
You know, what you say, Kristen, is so beautiful. And I feel like it circles back to what Tom was saying earlier about people being seen and heard. It's, I don't want to say it's the bottom line, but it is one of the bottom lines. And if we do smile at someone or chat with someone, or just, they're seen and heard. It's so important.
As we bring Jim back into the conversation to close out today's program, just listening to what the three of you were sharing, with it being springtime here in the Northeast here in the U.S., as part of my morning walk, I've been noticing which daffodils are opening up, which other flowers are starting to open up, and we're all part of nature. But the springtime in particular is a wonderful time to be reminded of nature and all the gifts and everything that it has to offer us, and to allow myself to be fully present to the peace that's in the world. To listen to the birds in the morning or in the evening when I'm walking, or noticing as the trees are starting to bud. Just the extraordinary amount of peace that exists in the world, if we just take the time to notice, and to for me to be fully present to what's there in nature, allows me to be fully present in my daily interactions with other humans. So I was just inspired by your comments and reminded of my daily experience. Welcome back, Jim.
Thank you. Well, your daffodils, Tom, reminds me I'm in Washington, D.C., and it's the middle of cherry blossom season. So the cherry blossoms are out all over, and I was taking a walk over the weekend. I was on the mall. I was in a big protest at the Washington Monument, and having the cherry blossoms and the breeze. And it was a beautiful, beautiful reminder that even in the heart of the beast, nature still blossoms. And so thank you for bringing that in. I think the domain I'd love to open with you is this increasingly apparent reality that we're all suffering almost the same now. If you think of a year and a half ago, when the issue was around women's right and abortion and sovereignty, the focus was on what would the assault on women and the assault on people of gender fluidity. But, in the last 90 days, Trump has put almost everybody under similar assault, whether you're a federal worker, who's just going along minding your own business, massive tariffs against countries all over the world. And I think that's one of the characteristics of our time, is that, we're normally thinking that there's an equilibrium, and there's one or two groups or individuals that get singled out. And I think we're rapidly evolving into a situation where virtually everyone is under duress. So, and I wanted to start with you, Karen, because I think the image that you brought up of Kuan Yin couldn't be more perfect for the specificities of our time.
Mhm.
You know, that feminine energy riding the tail of the dragon, and still maintaining grace. And so I would love to have, as you know, we begin to close, to just to ponder that image and reflect on those qualities as they pertain to everyone who's now under assault, male and female, kind of rich and poor, citizens or foreigners. Everyone is suffering from the Trump effect. And we all need pretty much the same remedial medicine.
Yeah, no, well said. Well said, Jim. And many of my early decade consulting was with government, Social Security Administration, the DOT, the Santa Clara County, San Mateo County. I know how hard these people work.
Mhm.
They taught me so much about what it is to be a dedicated employee who is dedicated to your community. What the EPA, you know, whatever that dedication, that level of dedication, they weren't thinking profits. And it was always such a contrast. I mean, the situation that we're in is ripping people's hearts apart. It's ripping apart the stability that they've based their life on. They had a secure job, they had a pension, they had a community of people that they've worked with for so many years. They were a stand for good work to whatever degree they could be. Could there be improvements? Of course. Could the systems come up with, you know, innovations? Of course. But I agree, the discontinuity in so many lives, in America and abroad, is going to ripple out in effects that we can't even comprehend yet. What this will ripple into. The waters under Kuan Yin's dragon just got a lot rougher, and she and the dragon are able and willing and ready, and they're there, and they're holding center. But wow, such a journey we have all stepped into at this point. Yeah.
You know, and Kristen, the same is happening in Europe.
Yeah.
You know, there's just complete devastation of I would say, the worldview and mental and emotional equilibrium of our world.
Yeah.
And it's an extraordinary situation in which we find ourselves.
Yeah, it's everybody's asked to have little bags now in their house of food and medicine and water. And like, what is this? You know, so plus, yeah, the unsettling ground in, yeah, you see France, I mean, every country, Germany, everywhere, there's so much unsettling matters going on. And it's back to this thing with trust, because just as there is an increased need to trust in the divine or in ourselves and in each other, because what we see too many people don't want to trust their politicians anymore. And I mean, in Europe, as in the US, but also in Europe, this is a big thing now. Can't trust. We thought we could, and I mean, some you can trust maybe, but people are also wondering, can I? And that is an awful feeling when we always thought we could trust. And so it's happening worldwide. It's not, it's just different. And then we are so interconnected also, you know, and yeah, and suddenly I'm from Norway and up in Scandinavia, you know, and suddenly Greenland is at stake. Who would have thought, you know? Just saying. And and people are they you don't know what to believe. So again, it's this thing, what can I believe? So I think in the age of confusion, perhaps it's this increasing need for the divine, and it's also increasing need in our humanity, the human heart, that we can come together. And if we are really lucky, this chaos, all these things that are, let's say, not so nice, if that can cause or desire and catapult us into something much better than it would have been without this negative or the uh, this yeah, let's call it negative, but it depends what we look at, from which I don't know what to say, this interruption, let's say. And one of the things I've noticed many times gathering many women through the work I do, I've held these workshops where I've asked people to share their dreams, because it's very easy to say what you don't like. Oh, I don't like Trump, I don't like Macron, whatever you don't like. And then I say, what is your dream? What would you like? And sometimes many humans have also problems with that, because once we start wishing really, it also carries somehow some responsibility. And although for some people this is very easy to say, oh, I would like to live in a world that's so and so, or have a workplace or a relationship that's in a certain way, often many also avoid it. So I think it's a time where we are asked to step into a certain responsibility also, to dare to wish and dream and start calling in and creating another possibility.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Sean, what would be your comment?
I thank you. I feel we are being spoon-fed fear.
Mhm.
We are being spoon-fed fear, and the fear and the uncertainty, of course, the unknown, and then the unknown breeds more fear. So I like what you're talking about, Kuan Yin. I think of the Bodhisattva. I think of the Gita. How do we live with this uncertainty? How do we live with Dharma? How do we get comfortable with uncertainty in the midst of this fear? And I'm not sure I have the answer, but I certainly can see where it's coming from. And it's so much about fear. And like Kristen was saying, when Sean, anyway, finds that sweet spot of alignment with earth and source, a lot, maybe that's when we can each be a bodhisattva in our small world, if you will. And I want to acknowledge you, Jim, bringing back the State of the World Forum. Big, it's huge. So I'll close my comments with that.
Well, before turning it back over to Tom, I just want to underscore what you said, Sean, because I think this comment about we're being spoon-fed fear is really important in the following way. I saw an interview with Bob Woodward last week, who's written 4 books on the time of Trump, one of which was called Fear. And he brought out something that I hadn't noted, or at least I'd forgotten, where he said in one of his many interviews with Trump, one-on-one interviews, he asked Trump to define power. And Trump said, fear.
Yeah.
So you can see it all over, both domestically and internationally, this assertion of power through the installation of fear. You know, and I think that's why this image of Kuan Yin, and by the way, that's 2 images of Kuan Yin over my left shoulder. I really revere Kuan Yin in a very special way, because I think of all, for me, of all the feminine forms of God, Kuan Yin feels to me emotionally as the most graceful and elegantly smooth about her aura, as opposed to, say, Kali, as an example. And I think we need that smoothness in our souls now. So I really appreciate, Karen, you bringing in that image, because if I agree 100% that if there's one face of the divine we need to key off of right now,
Mhm.
it's the gracefulness and elegant equilibrium of Kuan Yin that can
Mhm.
ride the dragon over the utmost turbulence, and the smile is never off her face because she's always self-assured in her presence of being. And so I draw a lot of comfort from that. So thank you for that.
I do too. I'm sorry. Just a last giggle is a friend of I'm cautious about the smile never leaves her face for women, because as a friend said to me recently, she said, "You suffer as I do from the smiling face syndrome." As women, we need to be careful about
Yeah,
that one.
too. That's also true. That's also true. That's also true. Although I've never seen an image of Kuan Yin without a smile.
I haven't either, because yeah. Yes, I agree with Fred. Kuan Yin can be Kuan Yin because Kali is also there living right
Yeah,
inside.
yeah. Good point. Very good point. Very, very good point. Tom, why don't you close us out and then tee us up for tomorrow?
Yeah, I think I want to pick up on the theme of fear, but also on something that Kristen mentioned about what's happening in Europe right now with people having supplies of food and medicine and things. And what we're witnessing is the leadership in Europe saying we need to create our own defense strategy. We need to allocate $800 billion to defend ourselves. And in this moment of chaos, there's actually an opportunity for a different paradigm. And I would love this conversation we've been having this morning about the wisdom and the intuition of the feminine to step forward and say, you know what? We actually could take that $800 billion and deploy it in a very different way. We could engage the Russians in a conversation and welcome them into the European Union. We could reestablish a Europe in a very different way and allocate that 900 billion dollars in a way that's of service to the collective European community. And that would change the dynamics in the world. And that I don't see that conversation happening. I would welcome it. And I think in this moment of chaos, those are the kinds of conversations we have an opportunity to be initiating and having. And so, Kristen, I would welcome you to take that message to leadership in Europe and change the conversation.
Thank you.
I am just really grateful, Sean, for helping to put this week together. Kristen, Karen, great having you with us today. I'm very excited about continuing the conversation tomorrow. So thank you all for being with us. And as always, Jim, thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you,
Thank
Sean,
you. Thank you.
Kristen, Karen.
Thank you.
Very good to see you. And as Stan said in the green room, Karen, as we closed, give Rick the biggest hug from all of us that you ever gave him. We love him very, very dearly, and I'm delighted to hear that he's getting better and better day by day. So give him our warmest love.
I will do that.
And that'll bring us to a close for today, everyone. You can join these illustrious people in the after chat. You'll see the link in the chat box Stan just put in, and you receive the link in your Zoom reminders for today. And then we'll see you all again tomorrow for our second of 5 programs on conscious leadership. Thanks so much. Bye for now.
Thank you.